We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Nicole Byer, helping you make those rooms flyer. Today's style tip: when it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild! Like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Ooh, fierce! This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Welcome back to the Basketball Show. Paul Sir, Ryan Reed joining you this morning on Sports 1440. Happy to be joined once again by our good friend Kevin Lehman, longtime voice of men's college basketball, joining us today on the Basketball Show. Kevin, welcome to the program. It's great to have you back.
Thanks, Paul. Glad to be back. How's your bracket doing? Because I got a little red ink on mine.
Mine's, you know what, honestly, mine's not as ugly as it normally is, Kevin, but it's still ugly. Like, it ain't pretty. But but usually mine are train wrecks. Grand Canyon was not a good choice in the men's bracket, Kevin.
Well, you know, history tells you they're a good one to go with.
Yeah. Yeah, and I thought they were better than they were, and certainly better than they were last night, and they probably are. But as you know, as well as anybody, the one shining moment can go. It can be a bright spotlight, or it can be a very dull, disappointing, quick exit. Yeah. And so, just ask Clemson, huh?
Yeah, that's the one I got wrong with that Clemson team. But you know, and I had that team. Oh, hold on a second. I got to knock on my window.
Okay.
You need to leave, sir. You know that.
Okay.
Okay, I'm back with you.
Okay. When I heard you need to leave, sir, I'm thinking, where's Kevin hanging out now? But
well, I had that McNeese State team in the Paradise Jam, so I knew it has a pretty good team, but I guess they have a little trouble today with Purdue.
Yeah, they're getting worked right now. But they had their one shining moment. And Clemson woke up far too late, made a game of it. It was certainly, boy, talk about a tale of two halves, huh?
Yeah, no question. I thought they were going to make a comeback on them, but we've got, they're having a little trouble today with Purdue.
Yes. Purdue's, the Big Ten defense, I think, is just really getting to them. Kevin, I want to run through some of the matchups today. We're going to start with our Iowa roots, and let's talk about the Drake game the other night and their victory over Missouri. That really was a special moment for a whole lot of reasons, wasn't it?
Well, I had Drake a number of times. I probably had him 12 times this year, so that was not an upset in my mind. I knew Drake was going to be able to control the tempo in that game, which they did, and the teams that try to run with Drake, you can't do it. So if you're going to beat Drake, you have to kind of, what I call, get down and ugly and play a game, a dirty game like they are. You got to beat them at their own style, and that's hard to do because they control possessions so well.
Well, the fact that they have they are last in the NCAA in terms of time of taking their shots on average it's an incredible style of play. And to me, we were talking about this when we opened the show. It's part of the absolute beauty of NCAA basketball, in my opinion, Kevin, is that this is so unique now globally, certainly compared to the NBA. But the fact that the international style of play is pretty much across the board very, very similar. It's people executing out of the screen and roll with a 24-second clock. Coaches are taken out of the flow of the game because you can't call a timeouts when play is going on. The wider key, all of those factors add up, and it's wonderful to watch NCAA basketball. So a team like Drake with lesser physical ability can go against a much more talented team physically and be able to control the game the way Drake does and end up being victorious.
And what's amazing about that, Paul, if you look at this Drake team, what they do defensively, and they have an interesting concept in their game preparation. They don't use scout teams. They just defend what they call concepts. And they had 13 steals against that Missouri team. They averaged 9 steals plus per game in Valley play. They led the Valley. And this is a team that doesn't press. They play a half-court defense that's really smothering, and they're really active with their hands. Really well coached team, and they're going to have they're going to give who they got coming up here today.
Texas Tech.
Yeah, which Grant McCaslin and Ben McCollum are best of friends. Those teams actually scrimmaged in one of those secret scrimmages back in November, so they know each other pretty well. I don't know if they'll be able to sneak up on this Tech team.
Tech team's awfully good. This would be a major upset. I totally agree with you. I think Tech, they're very physical, and it's going to be really tough for Drake to match up with them. And I'm curious to see how how the guards handle the Tech pressure as well.
Well, I tell you what, their spacing's so good with Drake that pressure hasn't bothered them much. And what they do is, they're going to go through that pressure, they're going to pull it back out and milk that shot clock, and I think it kind of mentally wears out on the team trying to press against him. And if Tech tries to shoot a bunch of threes like they did the other night, that works against you because you're going to go and play defense at the other end. I had a Bradley game where they were on defense for a minute 20 against the Drake team. They never left the half court because they gave up 2 offensive rebounds.
That's again the magic of March Madness, is that you get to showcase a team like Drake that most people A, haven't heard of, and B, have never had the opportunity to watch up in Canada. Certainly, if they're down in the States, you always have access to it. I'm going to go a little bit down memory lane right now, just because a lot of people aren't aware of Drake basketball history. But Drake actually made it to the Final Four, and I want to say that was 1969 with the great Willie Wise, Dolph Pulliam. Was it Jeff Halliburton as well? And went up against and lost to in a very close game against Lou Alcindor, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's UCLA team, correct?
Correct, 1969. And Rick Wanamaker, who was a very successful real estate agent in Des Moines, actually blocked Lou Alcindor's skyhook.
I
the
remember.
only person to ever do it. Yeah, Rick Wanamaker also was a decathlete
Yes.
in the Drake relay. So you're an Iowa guy. You know those names too. Dolph Pulliam, Willie Wise, Willie McCarter. And the fifth starter, the great trivia question for that team is the fifth starter was a guy named Don Draper. Not the Don Draper from Mad Men, but the same name of Don Draper.
That's tremendous. Let's jump back to the bracket. Auburn, number 1 seed overall. Number 1 seed, what do you think? Auburn clearly a favorite to get to the finals, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think so. But today, you got Kalkbrenner, who's the 4-time Big East Defensive Player of the Year, going against Janiah Broome. So if anybody can handle him 1-on-1, this is a guy that can do it. Can Creighton shut down that three-point shooting and the other perimeter guys, and they don't have to double inside because of Kalkbrenner's size and presence around the rim. That's going to be a great 1-on-1 battle inside between Creighton and Auburn. But I think Auburn, even though they've lost a couple here of late, that's still my pick to get to the Final Four.
I've got them as well going to the Final Four, but another one of their SEC counterparts in Florida, they're awfully tough as well, and they're going to be squaring off against UConn. I picked Florida in that one. UConn this year, they had a nice win last night over Oklahoma, but they're not the UConn that won 2 national championships in a row, are they?
They are not, but I will say this about this game coming up, Florida and UConn. Florida's never been in this type of pressure situation before. Their coach has not coached in this situation, and Bobby Hurley has. So you got to give a little edge to UConn on that. I don't know if they have enough talent to overcome this Gator team that is really, really good. And I've got them winning the whole thing. I'll let that out of this bag right now. But again, as I think about, they're not experienced in that area. And Paul, in this situation, coaching is so important. The coaches that have been there, face this type of pressure, know how to get their teams ready, because there's so much media, so much things going on outside the lines that you have to deal with your team and prepare them for that.
Kevin, one of the differences, and we've touched on it quite a bit on our program today, is the beauty of NCAA basketball is that it really is the most unique brand of basketball left in the world. The NBA is well documented now as a three-point analytics chuck fest. But when you watch international basketball globally, really the similarities between how teams play with their drag and screen and roll and spacing, it's so similar. Whereas when you get to the NCAA, you really have not just a variety of styles of play and the way offenses and defenses are run, but you cannot overstate what you just pointed out. The impact of coaching is much greater in the NCAA than any other style of basketball globally, because the coaches can still call timeouts during the play. You can in the NBA as well, but that's so different, that the narrow key, traditional back to the basket post players, but the coaching and the adjustments and the ability to change momentum, I think, is accentuated in the NCAA more than anywhere else.
That's a great point, because you have a number of those timeouts. You have those floating timeouts. You can extend the game at the end by fouling and sending to a team to the free throw line, and in essence trying to trade threes for twos or threes for ones and extend games that way. Some of us get frustrated because the end of a college game sometimes takes 10 minutes to play the last minute of the game, but also that's what makes it exciting. I still would love to see the college game advance the ball after a made basket on a timeout to the half court. I think that would even add more excitement to that college game. But I'm right with you. I think the coaching is much more accentuated in this type of tournament, and it's a one and done. It's not like in the NBA where you've got a 7-game series. This is it's do or die every time you go out there. If you lose, you're going to be hanging up your shoes, and the next team gets to advance. So there's so much pressure on these types of situations.
Talking with Kevin Lehman here on the Basketball Show on your sports leader, Sports 1440. Kevin, a couple of other matchups that I'm really curious about. One is BYU and Wisconsin. Now, BYU has been, I think, a storyline that's developed over the course of the year. They've got some outstanding players, seem to be really well coached, beat a very good Iowa State team twice, and were really successful in the Big 12. So now they match up against Wisconsin, who looks not like the typical Wisconsin teams of old. Like whenever you watch Wisconsin, you always expect the score to be 53-49. But this Wisconsin team's very different. But I think this is a real intriguing matchup.
No, I'm with you, Paul. Greg Gard, we try to fire him every year. And every year he comes back with a great team. He's certainly morphed the way that he's played, because it used to be the old flex offense.
Yep.
Down in the shot clock. But now they're playing fast. I think they had like 30-some threes when they beat Iowa. They set a record on threes when they played the Iowa Hawkeyes at home. And BYU, you referenced that game against Iowa State. They had 20-plus turnovers in that game at Hilton Coliseum against the Iowa State Cyclones. Still won the game because they shot so many threes. So, again, we talk about the three-point line being a huge factor. Both these teams are going to want to shoot threes. So this will be not your typical Wisconsin game, as you said. This will be high-scoring, and they'll be ready in threes wherever they're playing this game, and it'll be very interesting.
Another matchup I really am intrigued by is Houston and Gonzaga. Gonzaga had a real nice game against Georgia the other night, and I think it surprised people because I think a lot of people picked Georgia, quite frankly, because they're very athletic, very talented. But you mention often, Kevin, about the experience of the coaching and the experience of the program and how that plays into March Madness in this one-and-done environment. I mean, what Mark Few has done at Gonzaga is nothing short of remarkable, to have that program mentioned in the same blue blood conversation as Kentucky and North Carolina and Duke. It's just remarkable. But, boy, oh boy, this Houston team is tough.
Yeah, it is. And you wonder if Tommy Lloyd going to Arizona and the pipeline that Gonzaga had from foreign players may have dried up a little bit. They don't quite seem to have the same talent pool they had in the past.
That's right.
But look what Kelvin Sampson at Houston has done in the Big 12. He's replaced Kansas as the team to beat in the Big 12. You look what he's done the last 2 years. He's won the league both years. They've only been in it in 2 years. And he's also taken an Oklahoma team years ago to the Final Four. So Kelvin Sampson has that experience. And when you talk to him, he spent those years in the NBA, and he said that really helped him become a better college coach. And I think he's learned to designate better. I think this Houston team, because not only do they defend probably as well as anybody, if not the best defensive team in the country, they also make threes. They're making threes at 40%. So I think when you go deep in the tournament. It's about guard play. L.J. Cryer has won, how about this one, 4 Big 12 championships, 2 at Baylor and 2 at Houston. Not many guys can put that on their resume. I think this is a really, really solid Houston team.
It really is. Every time I've watched them, I've been impressed. Certain teams stand out, Houston being one, Drake another, on how they play defense. And it's something I wanted to mention to you, Kevin, that I also love about the NCAA is the emphasis on defense compared, say, to the NBA, where they have all those silly rules and restrictions and how you can defend, which to me is an elementary. They've taken the best athletes in the world and given them elementary school rules and how they have to play defense. I mean, there's no dumber rule in basketball than defensive 3 seconds, in my opinion. But but the way Houston helps on screens, the way they recover, the effort and intelligence that they play with and toughness, my goodness, that is something I would encourage anybody who watches this game between Gonzaga and Houston to watch in particular. It's not the pretty part of the game, it's the gritty part of the game. But man, that team is gritty.
Well, they do things that, they fled to the ball, so all eyes are on the basketball. And I think it comes down to your ability to own your own matchup and your recoveries when you come out of those double teams. Because as you mentioned before, everyone's doing a high ball screen, and that's to distort your defense. So if you got 2 players on the ball, you're playing obviously 4-on-3 behind it. So how well can you cover up and rotate? Houston does that as well as anybody. I was able to call some Houston games when Kelvin Sampson first went in there. He didn't quite have the talent left yet that he has now, but certainly to watch one of his practices and understand how he evolved as a coach and what their philosophies are is really, really was a great eye-opening experience for me. And Kelvin's done this too. He's made this a family affair. He's got his son on as assistant coach, and evidently they have the film sessions at his house so he can go home and play with his grandkids. So the players come to his house to allow him to more family time. I think it's a really unique situation, and he's really adjusted his coaching style in today's college basketball world.
You know what? I don't know this for a fact, Kevin, and I'm talking to Kevin Lehman, longtime NCAA play-by-play television coverages by Kevin through many, many decades here on the Basketball Show on Sports 1440. But in the old days, and by that I mean as recent as 5 years ago, with the NCAA's draconian way of regulating college basketball, Calvin having teams over and feeding them, doing film, may have even been an NCAA violation. Like the way that, when you look at the NCAA today compared to 10 years ago, it's an unrecognizable organization.
Yeah, wasn't there a time of within the last decade that you couldn't give them you give them like jelly for their bagels, but you couldn't give them cream cheese. That's how iconic.
It's exactly right.
Yeah, the NCAA was. But certainly now at the age of NIL, opening them up, and this house settlement that's coming here in April is going to change the landscape of basketball, even more of college athletics, even more than we've seen it change. I got a great Kelvin Sampson story for you that I saw one time on The Athletic, because when he took the job at Houston, he went to talk to his AD. He said, my AD, he had like 4 phones on this side of him, 3 laptops, and I was talking to him about what I needed to be successful. He never looked up. And I finally said to him, if you want to win national championships, and that's when the AD finally looked up from his phones and started listening. Because if we don't make these changes, you're going to fire me in 5 years like you fired the last 3 coaches in 5 years. So, he understood what it took to be successful. And I think you're going to see now with this new age of NIL, transfer portal, there's going to be some haves and some have-nots in college basketball. I think the upsets of Drake are going to become fewer and fewer as we go through this NCAA tournament.
I think you're right. This is a topic for another time, and I'd love to do a deep dive into the future, because adding in, and I'm going to link it into another question for you, adding in the fact that you can now go out of high school and play junior college basketball and not lose any eligibility, to me, that's That's a game changer, but I'm glad it's happening because it's now going to be harder and harder for high school players to get recruited unless you're a McDonald's All-American caliber player because, and this is the line of questioning, today we have a great matchup between two storied, controversial coaches in John Calipari at Arkansas against Rick Pitino at St. John's. And Pitino has been very vocal about, I'm not recruiting high school kids, I'm going after 22 to 24-year-old men. That change is very real now. It used to be the one and done. You know, we saw a lot of 18 and 19-year-olds out there playing. Not so much anymore.
Well, I've seen this too, Paul, because what you're talking about. The Northern Iowas of the world in the Missouri Valley Conference, the Drakes of the world. Northern Iowas had their best recruiting class as far as rankings in their history because now there's a group of players in that, let's say, ranked 150th to 250 that they couldn't touch before because the power leagues that you're talking about are either going to take a one and done or they're going to go to the transfer portal and take a mid-major, another player that's been proven. So what you're seeing, the mid-majors now become the junior colleges or the feeder system for these Power 5 programs. That would be the Power 4 plus the Big East, the major conferences. So it's interesting to see how this is going to develop because the mid-majors now can maybe recruit a better class of player out of high school and develop them, but how long can they keep them? Because I think Northern Iowa's thinking is that we're going to keep these guys for 2 years, and then you're going to make some real money in NIL as you go into maybe a Big 10, SEC school, Big East school, Big 12 school.
Isn't that a crazy, what you just described, it just struck me. That was how you used to perceive junior college. Now you're looking at mid-majors becoming farm teams for the Blue Bloods, and it's very, very real in the way that you described it. It's just fundamentally changing everything about the game of basketball in the NCAA, but we just had Chris, what's Chris's last name? He's the play-by-play radio voice of the Oregon Ducks women's program. And, you know, he was just talking about embracing NIL because you have to now. You have to see where you fit in the food chain now in NCAA basketball, don't you?
You certainly do. And even if you're a mid-major, you have to say to your players, okay, what's your best interest to go on somewhere else and make more money? So you have to have that open door policy because if you become that coach that closes the door or gets upset when your players leave, you're going to have that reputation and you won't be able to recruit anymore. So it's become an open door both ways. It's really interesting to see the players, you know, and I've been around Northern Iowa a lot. You know that program.
Yes.
It was a developmental program. I had the Bradley NIT game Wednesday where they beat North Alabama, another team that would get players, keep them for 5 years, redshirt in the year, put more weight on them, hopefully kids that might grow an inch or two. Those players now they can't keep in their program. And so I'm wondering how those coaches that were developmental coaches that were really solid and mid-majors that were always at the top of the league, how they can continue to thrive and with this new landscape we're seeing in college basketball. And I had this interesting conversation with ESPN with my producers that assign games about what we talked about. There's a better class of players that the mid-majors can recruit. And his comeback was, yeah, but look how much better we are at the top now with the Auburns of the world, Houston's, because now if they need a certain type of player, they can go back and pick them off a mid-major team and plug it in. So the teams at the top are going to be even better now. Of course, he's looking at it as a viewership because they're always giving us numbers, how many eyeballs viewed these games that they played. So they're looking at a different angle than purists like you and I are looking at it.
Purists like you and I. That makes us sound really smart, Kevin. I like that. I really do. And I'm talking to Kevin Lehman.
That are very old.
Definitely right on the last one. Kevin Lehman's joining us here on the Basketball Show. Unfortunately, we'll have to wrap things up. I have a couple of final questions for you. If you had to pick one team right now that you think is going to pull an upset off over this weekend, who would you pick?
I think I got to stick with the Drake team because I've seen them so much and their ability to control tempo put pressure on a team and to have them so they're get tight around their just get like we saw the Missouri team. They just got tight as that game went on because they couldn't get that team into the flow that they wanted. And Drake can control tempo. So that would be my team, the Drake Bulldogs. Can they beat Tech and advance to the Sweet 16? We certainly hope so.
That would be great for not just for the Drake culture and the Drake experience, but also Missouri Valley and mid-majors in general, because to your point, I did have one final point to make as well. The rumor has it, and I don't know the young man's name off the top of my head, but the number one recruit out of high school next year is going to be going apparently to Brigham Young University because one of the billionaire supporters of BYU is forking out, I think it's $8 million to get him to show up. That's another X factor in all of this, isn't it? It's going to be not just tradition, it's going to be the deep pockets that an individual school that may not be on the blue blood radar right now, but could get awfully competitive quickly because they have the financial backing in order to get top players to come there.
Well, and Paul, we're seeing it with coaches because Darren DeVries, who I coached at Northern Iowa, took Drake to the tournament 3 times, went to West Virginia, just took the Indiana job. He was offered the Iowa job where his brother was a football All-American. He's got Iowa ties. Their NIL money was nowhere near Indiana's. He turned that job down to take the Indiana job. So you're seeing coaches now, their first question is, how much do I have in NIL money? Basically, what is my payroll for acquiring players? So watching coaches move is also going to be a huge factor in who takes which jobs.
Wow. Never thought of that, but that makes perfect sense from a business planning standpoint. What's your budget comparatively? That definitely is Iowa's loss and Indiana's gain because DeVries can really coach. Well, and you're an Iowa guy, Paul. So Iowa's at a crossroads right now because they have to decide whether they're going to be a player, yes,
or they're going to be a bottom feeder in the Big Ten. This is a huge, huge year because they have to get their NIL package, which is around $1.2 million, toward the bottom of the Big Ten. It's got to be around $6 million for NIL money to put your roster together, and they're nowhere near that. So they have to make some huge decisions. Plus, pay off Fran McCaffrey $4.2 million. Plus, they're trying to do a $60 million renovation of Carver Hawkeye.
Wow, that's a lot of zeros that they're going to have to come up with in a state that's not used to that kind of cash having to acquire that kind of cash. Kevin, thanks so much for joining us today. Absolute pleasure as always, and I look forward to doing this again real soon.
Okay, Paul, enjoy the weekend. This is the greatest weekend of college basketball, of sports in the entire year.
Totally agree with you. Kevin Lehman, longtime NCAA college basketball voice. You can check Kevin out in the NIT right now. Great broadcaster joining us here on the Basketball Show on Sports 1440. Going to take a break right now. We'll come back, talk more madness, more NCAA. We're going to talk more about the women's March Madness as well. Here on your sports leader, Sports 1440. Welcome back to the Basketball Show. Sports 1440, Paul Sir, Ryan Reed. Ryan, let's look at the poll.
So over on Twitter, basketball_show, we just posed the question from Matchup today. We're asking our fans who will win, Arkansas or St. John's in the battle of John Calipari and Rick Pitino. So far, it's incredibly close. 51.9% of the vote lean Pitino and St. John's, and 48.1% of the vote lean Calipari and Pitino and St. John's, and Calipari in Arkansas is 48%, which is interesting because Arkansas is the 10 seed and a pretty big underdog seed-wise.
100%, but again, credit to our listeners because
they know ball.
They know basketball because I would agree with them. I think those are the right odds, to be honest, because Arkansas is really well coached. Here's the thing, though, that St. John's does have that Arkansas doesn't, and that's depth. They are a bit more physical, a bit deeper. I do favor Pitino, but I think the percentage that our listeners have come up with.
Basically split down the middle.
Yeah, split down the middle, slight edge to Pitino.
I think it'll be closer than this UConn game, 42. I think it'll be closer than 42-7.
Well, that 42-7 UConn women over Arkansas State. Arkansas State's 21-10.
It's their first game in March in a tournament. My mom just texted me that fun fact.
Yeah, well, thanks, Mom. And the Arkansas State, there's actually been some Canadian players that have played at Arkansas State as well that have done really well. One of them played for the Stingers for a number of years, and I'll come on his name in just a bit. He's from Calgary. And we had an Edmonton player as well go down to Arkansas State and play 3 of his 4 years of his eligibility down there.
It's kind of tough when Arkansas State scores. I can see the UConn bench kind of excited for them. When you get to that point, it's like,
Well, and honestly, I think that leads into something I wanted to touch on in our last segment today. And that is, I've been listening to a lot of the broadcasting of the women's March Madness. And number one, exciting, so excited and pleased about the development of the interest nationally and internationally in women's basketball in general and in NCAA basketball specifically. It's great to see, certainly over the last 2 years, the excitement generated primarily by Caitlin Clark's record-breaking run elevated the women's game into the national psyche at a level, of course, that is unparalleled. Last year, we were looking the numbers up before we came on air. The women's game, the women's championship game between Iowa and who did they play last year, Ryan?
I'll find it for
South
you.
Carolina. Iowa and South Carolina, who won. Iowa lost 2 years in a row, first to LSU, then to South Carolina. But the numbers, 4 million more viewers watched the women's national championship than watched UConn win their national championship on the men's side. That is incredible and gratifying. This year, the numbers of viewers during the regular season were actually up 3% year over year of watching women's basketball on a weekly basis. That's great. Now we'll see, based on who gets to the Final Four, who gets to the national championship, how the numbers and viewership keeps up.
Again, to
this year.
reemphasize, the numbers would be better if Juju Watkins was playing Paige Beckers in the final.
100%.
That's going to be a Elite Eight game instead. I wouldn't be surprised if that outdraws some of the Final Four games or maybe the championship game. No?
I think it would. I think it probably would and probably could. The only problem would be when it would be played. If it's being played in the afternoon, that may affect the numbers, but we'll see. We'll see where that goes. I'm not sure what the timing will be. But one of the points I wanted to make is a lot of the announcers are talking about the parity that's now in women's NCAA basketball. It ain't there yet. It's much better. Incremental, positive, enormous steps have been taken in women's basketball. There are more good teams than ever. But my gosh, like when you look at the first rounds of the March Madness, this reminds me of like 20 to 30 years ago on the men's side. Like at that time, if you were a 16th seed and you're playing a 1 seed, you're getting beat by 40. That doesn't happen.
There's a lot of moral victories for them at that point.
You got to the dance.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Mount St. Mary's and Duke, that sort of thing. Like that's a great moment that you can have. But in women's basketball, the parity isn't there yet. There are a lot of 25 to 50-point blowouts in the first round and the first 2 rounds, really, in NCAA basketball. The exciting thing, though, is that in the last rounds, when you get to the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8 and the Final Four, yes, there is more parity. That's a big step. And I think, honestly, one of the problems women's basketball have created for them as an entity has created for itself is it's overstating certain aspects of the game. One, parity. Not there yet, getting much better. WNBA, not there yet, but getting much better. The thing, though, that sticks, I think, in a lot of people's craw, though, has been the anger and resentment that has been expressed even in the off season for the WNBA towards Caitlin Clark. One of the things that Clark has been like bulletproof in terms of how she has responded to criticism and to the media spotlight. She has tried really hard to be gracious and stay away from making controversial decisions or controversial statements. And yet, players, coaches, people at high levels are coming out and being critical. The only reason the meal ticket's getting punched is because of Caitlin Clark. And now Juju Watkins, Paige Becker. I mean, these are great players and are going to make their own impact. They still don't have the, I guess, charismatic game that for whatever reason, and I always liken it to Tiger Woods, to Michael Jordan, there are just those players that for whatever reason galvanize viewership and get people excited. Clark was one of those athletes and will be again this year as the Indiana Fever
they have more national televised games than the Lakers do.
They have more nationally
televised. Caitlin Clark will only play in 2 regular season games that are nationally televised this season. She has 41. Yeah, 41 of 43 are.
41, think of that. Now, are they doing that because she's a horrible person, or are they doing that because she's not playing by the rules or she has some unfair advantage, or are they doing that because people want to see her play? Well, let's guess. People want to see her play, and that's good for women's college basketball because when they watch her play, they watch a lot of other teams play too. That wouldn't be watched if Caitlin Clark wasn't on the court. And then hopefully Juju Watkins has the same effect. Hopefully
it won't be the
Paige
same.
Beckers.
No, you just
similar,
want something. Yeah, you want another star that people watch.
Star, and it ain't Angel Reese. Because
she still gets people watching though.
She does, but number one, not at anywhere near the levels of Caitlin Clark, and number two, she's nowhere near the dynamic, watchable player in terms of style of play. One of the great, maybe she'll end up being the greatest rebounder. And you
need storylines anyway, right? Like to get people in, you need villains, you need storylines, you need heroes, you need anti-heroes.
And Angel has done a great job of being an anti-hero and a villain. And she seems to have embraced it. So good for her. That's the path that she's taken.
She makes good money for it too. So
she does.
She get the bag, I guess.
She does. And in fact, I mean, the whole, for people that are familiar, there's a league that was started by WNBA players called the Unrivaled League, which is an off-season 3-on-3 full-court league that she was one of the outstanding players in that just had their season wrap up. But they paid their players more than the WNBA. They really had a lot of corporate money behind it. They did a lot of very progressive things to help women in sport. So there's some positive things that Angel Reese is a big part of. And I think that's what's exciting about women's basketball is now you've got, as you correctly point out, Ryan, heroes, anti-heroes, villains, not knights in armor. Can't say damsels in distress, but you have to say you've got both sides of the coin that are really taking hold. And that's what's exciting. The game's still uneven. Like we said, there's still a big disparity in terms of the top from the bottom, but the middle is getting bigger and filling out really nicely in terms of quality of players and quality of teams. It's an exciting, dynamic time in women's basketball in particular.
And I hear about this all the time from my sister and my mom, and actually just everybody in my family. We will watch games. Like I'm back when I was younger, I'd prefer just to watch the NBA or that kind of thing. But now I will purposely tune in to different women's basketball. Like for example, now there's men's basketball on now, but I am watching the women's game instead.
And I have to question the wisdom in that. Yeah, Paige Beckers, but 54-11.
Yeah, I may have to change the channel now, but in theory, it was the thought. Like I was interested to see how it went, and it went about as well as I thought it would for Arkansas State.
Well, but yeah, I think it's meeting expectations.
And your Iowa Hawkeyes are up 40.
No, Iowa had a real nice rebound season to the departure of Caitlin Clark this year. But I think, as Kevin Lehman just pointed out, for NIL money, like the University of Iowa, both on the men's and women's side, are going to fall behind if they're not able to beef up their NIL money in the Big Ten. And that's going to go across the board for Division I basketball when you're dealing with 360-plus teams. That's a lot of zeros that have to be filled out for programs to be competitive now that we moved to a pay-to-play kind of playing environment. You're listening to the Basketball Show on Sports 1440. Paul Sir, Ryan Reed, in our last stretch run of our program today. I think, Ryan, going back to the men's NCAA, are you, as a basketball fan, enjoying watching the styles of play as much as you ever have? Is there anything that you notice that is different about NCAA basketball compared to, say, 5 years ago?
When I was younger, I think I watched more of it just because I felt like it was more like heroes. But now that I'm the age of the players playing, maybe it feels a little bit different that way. But I remember, I think it's the same style of game that I remember watching, like just kind of the unpredictability and that kind of thing. But when I was younger, it felt more magical, maybe. Like the magic of March. Just because I was a little kid, I was like, cheering them on, hoping I could do that someday.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead, I went to the ACAC, but close enough to Div 1.
Well, you know what? I always said this to the players that I coached at Concordia, and I believe this more than I ever have in my life. The experience you have, whether that's playing for Augustana or for Duke, to you in your life is the same experience on the court. Off the court, all of that changes. But
no NIL money, I'm afraid.
No, no, maybe a gift card to Tim's, but I think that's an important part of the whole overall athletic experience, even with the professionalizing of the sport. And again, Lehman Chris referred to it from Oregon. It's what you leave your basketball experience with that has better prepared you for the rest of your life is what you're going to take with you. And yes, certainly, you play at Duke, you play at Kentucky. That's a whole different deal. You're under a spotlight. There's lots of money. There's lots of perks. Of course, you're getting superstar treatment. But in terms of on the court, you're still having to perform. You're still having to play your best. You're still looking for ways to improve. You still have to get yelled at by your coach. All of those things are the same exact experience. And from that, the relationships you forge with your teammates, the contacts that you make with people that watch your games, even if it's only 300 versus 13,000, doesn't really matter. It's what carries forward for the rest of your life. And that's one of the things that I believe is about the dignity of being able to play post-secondary basketball, regardless of where you are. It's what you personally make out of that experience and what you take forward with you.
It's a fair assessment. Like I understand, obviously, I didn't know what Div 1 basketball felt like. So when I was playing for Augustana, that was like the best thing, right?
Yeah.
Like that was what my Div 1 experience was because I never played for Div 1. So my post-secondary experience is, in my mind, equal to someone in Div 1 because I never played Div 1. So that was my top tier experience.
Well, and Div 1, like people, it's like when you're a young person and you watch the magic of the NCAA, I want to do that when I grow up. The vast majority of people that want to do that don't, and if you do it, you understand real quickly. And talk to Ahira Guak of what it was like to make the transition from Harry Ainley down to New Mexico, then transferring to Loyola of Chicago, and the challenges that he faced.
I had a quick story from when I was at Augustana, and speaking of, I wasn't very exactly well known. I wasn't the greatest player at the ACAC level, but we did autographs for kids.
Yep.
And we were going through a line, and there was towards the end, there was a guy, Nate Bowie's very good. There was players that everybody knew, and they were signing the shirts. By the time it got down to me, they'd either ask, like, who are you, or just, like, skip me. And I was like, all right, that was it for the line. And I wasn't even offended. Like, I was a rookie, and I was like, yeah, no one should know who I am. But it was nice to sign stuff, but no one knew who I was at all. And
sports are positive. They're also negative. Sports are kind. And sports are cruel.
The kids are brutally honest.
Kids are brutally honest.
Who are you?
Who are you? That's tremendous, actually. Well, we know who you are, Ryan Reed, and here on the basketball show.
Not for my Augustana achievements, I'm afraid.
Well, no, that's fair. That's fair. I'm looking forward to some of the matchups today, in particular, that I think are going to be really, really interesting. UCLA and Tennessee. Honestly, when I watched UCLA the other night, they're better than I thought they were. And I'm curious how they're going to match up against a very, very good Tennessee team. Houston Gonzaga, really, really looking forward to that. I think I have to go with Houston by 10 to 15. I just don't think Gonzaga defensively is strong enough. I think they're going to do a real good job on Nembhard, and I think take away a lot of the things that he's able to do because the guard defensive play on Houston is so good. Wisconsin, BYU, that's going to be a great game. Wisconsin, Big Ten, had a great season. BYU is really tough. If BYU is able to get a lot of uncontested three-point shots off, and they've been doing a great job of getting wide-open three-point shots, that's going to be really, really interesting. Arkansas, St. John's, that's just going to be fun. Pitino is such a character. And man, oh man, if you ever hear Rick Pitino in an interview, it's a treat because he brings that New York street style. He's kind of like you've seen Al Pacino play coaches before in various movies, but he's kind of the real life version of Al Pacino. Colorado State, Maryland, again, that's going to be very, very good. Drake, Texas Tech, as our friend Kevin Lehman pointed out. I just don't know that Drake physically in the end is going to quite have enough, even with their outstanding defense and even with their ability to control tempo, if they're going to have quite enough for Tech, because Tech is awfully tough. Physically, I think it's going to be a real challenge for Drake, but I'm really hoping Drake can find some magic and find a way to get through that. And Michigan and Texas A&M, that's going to be very good. That's going to be a really good game. Michigan's an interesting team to watch. And by interesting, I mean a combination of good and really irritating. They really are a hard team to watch at times. Their actions on offense are quite undisciplined.
They're sporadic in their
Yeah, they have
movement.
the 7-footer Wolf who tries to handle the ball like a guard.
You're not Jokic.
No, not even close. He's got for a 7-footer, he's got great ball handling skills, but it's the quintessential ball handling going nowhere skills. And so he's going to have to be more of a factor. Their other big kid's kind of a stiff, but he's over 7 foot. So you got 2 7-footers in there. Again, you don't even see that in the NBA. So it really makes for a unique game. But that A&M Michigan game is going to be really interesting. And, of course, Auburn versus Creighton. Does Creighton, they have a 7-footer who can step out and shoot the 3. Great guard play, really good defenders. But will they have enough firepower to?
I wonder if they can call in Doug McDermott, like maybe a favor from the dad there, and just like, can you play one game for us?
Yes, just come back. We'll sneak you in the back door. We'll get you in the runway. But so many good matchups. And then on the women's side, depending on how it develops down to the Sweet 16, the intriguing matchups that are going to take place next weekend, culminating with what might be, as we've touched on a couple of times in the show today, to get to the Final Four, a matchup between South Carolina, or not South Carolina, USC and UConn. That could really be something. But there's other good matchups as well. UCLA, LSU, very good teams. Duke is a very good basketball team. Alabama, athletic as all get out. And Notre Dame, they're no slouch as well. And interspersed in there is also the University of Michigan is in the game too with Silas Swords is the name of the Canadian player. And there are a number of players, including one on UConn right now, that are from Canada. We still have, I believe, 10 or 12 Canadians in the NCAA. The thing we don't have this year, though, Ryan, is we don't have an R.J. Barrett. We don't have a Wiggins. We don't have a player that's
just above and beyond.
Just above and beyond. That's really going to be a major factor, I don't believe, in the NBA draft.
We even had Zach Edey last year, right?
Yeah, very much so. Edey's had an interesting year.
Until he said no to the Olympics. I still haven't never forgiven him for that.
Well, no, and you shouldn't. That was a boneheaded move. He'd be in the same spot today as he would have been if he had played in the Olympics.
We have Olivia. He didn't play at all, but we had that 7'9" guy for Florida, Ryu.
Yeah,
He's
the
a
red shirt.
Hasn't played all year, but
yeah.
Maybe down the road. I feel like just throwing him in the middle, like why not? But
Man,
or no,
if
7'9" is ginormous.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting where that goes.
He moves
year.
like obviously he's a slower guy. He's huge. He's like 310 pounds, but it doesn't look awkward when he walks. Like I feel like sometimes when you get to that height, you can kind of tell they kind of have a weird walk to them.
Yeah,
but respectfully, of course. But he has a normal gait. And
he does. He just can't play. He's just. Yeah, I mean, the game's way too fast for him. And
that's what they said about Zach Edey in his freshman year. But.
Right. And
so maybe down the road, but
exactly. And I mean, one of the things with the development of big players is that happens at a different pace than shorter players. And the question isn't what he's doing now, it's what he's going to do in 4 years. And that, you wish for this young man, since he's been gifted or cursed, depending on your perspective, with this kind of height, that he's able to be successful.
He's might not be done growing either. He's born in 06.
Oh my Gosh. Yeah, 7'9".
Do you ever think a guy born in 2006 is 7'9"? Isn't that kind of a weird thought?
7'9" is a weird thought, no matter what the year, but that adds to it certainly. Well, this has been a great show. March Madness is here. Enjoy the games over this weekend. NBA is giving us lots to talk about as well. So have a great time with all the different games. Drink it in. And, of course, people are watching how the Oilers are doing and all the things going on in the sports world right now.
I don't know how you would do on skates.
I'm terrible. I'm non-existent. So in memory of my son, Ben, please treat each other with kindness at all times. Remember, you do not know what others are going through in their lives, so they deserve our best selves in every encounter that we have. Have a great week on and off the court. As I said, enjoy March Madness, and thank you for spending your Saturday morning with us. This is Paul Sir, Ryan Reed, and you've been listening to the Basketball Show on your sports leader, Sports 1440.